Today, my wife and I are visiting Colonial Williamsburg, an amazing living history museum in Virginia that tells the early part of America's enduring story. Come along with me and my wife as we explore a history buff's paradise. That's coming up next.
Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever, one foot on land, the other on shore, one thing constant. Do you not know this song? Mm-hmm. You're not singing along, friends. What about this one? How does it go? It's a, Da, 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 da. God save George Washington. Yes? You know that one, do you not? Or at least the tune. We are changing the words, and this is perhaps the object of this age, to bring something ancient, that which we have inherited, and bring something new into the melody. Try something new, and that is what we are engaged in this year of 1777. You heard the news of last year, did you not? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Perhaps it's good we are gathered here today. This will come as quite a shock to you. Last year in 1776, what happened?
Declaration of Independence.
What exuberance. We must enter into this confab as we now enter into this new American experiment, and that is with the greatest of exuberance. So I say to you, good day, friends.
Good day.
There we have it, spoken like true Virginians, yes? Yeah. Are there only 13 Virginians present? If not from Virginia, where from?
Georgia.
Pennsylvania, land of religious anarchy. Welcome. Where?
Georgia.
North Carolina. Is that the good Carolina?
Yes. South Carolina.
Do you know, are there South Carolinians present, yes?
Yes.
I see you have distanced yourself from North Carolinians. Do you know whose father helped fix the boundary between North Carolina and Virginia?
Yours.
Huh?
Yours?
Yes, mine, good guess. Peter Jefferson on an expedition, so say the men of the expedition, they trekked through territory so dismal as to strike terror into the heart of every man. That sounds like North Carolina, does it not? Texas, welcome. Spanish territory. I'm glad you made it to civilized territory. Minnesota, welcome to your capital.
Utah.
New Jersey, Maryland.
Utah sounds exotic. Maryland, land of papists.
Georgia.
New Jersey.
Georgia.
I'm sorry.
Georgia.
Florida.
Hampshire.
The Spanish portion or the French portion? That depends on the year, does it not? Nonetheless, welcome one and all to Virginia. Welcome to this country that I call my country, this country in which I have lived for the past 17 years of my life. I'm sorry, I've lived in Virginia my entire life. I've lived in this city for the past 17 years of my life. I came to Williamsburg in the winter of 59 and 60. You know why I came to this city? To go to the college. Which college?
William and Mary.
The old Royal College of King William and his wife Mary, where I attended for 2 years. I received no degree and then moved back in with my mother. I hear this is now an American tradition. If you know anyone walking in these footsteps, tell them to press on. Continue. Do not let that flicker of light diminish in front of them. Press, press. Who knows, you might even become president someday. Nonetheless, I came here, I attended that institution, I fell in with a gentleman who I say fixed the destinies of my entire life. You know his name?
George Wythe.
That's a good guess. George Wythe is a good guess. His home sits on Palace Green, Mr. Wythe. This is actually the gentleman who introduced me to George Wythe. You know his name? Who said this? Round of applause for the lady in the grassy mezzanine. Dr. William Small, who was the head of the School of Philosophy at the college when I attended. The school that I attended, there are 4 schools. Philosophy, grammar, etc. I attended the School of Philosophy, Natural Philosophy, Mathematics, as I had been given a prior education. I needed not attend what might be considered a lower school at that institution. My father paid a great deal of money for my education, £20 sterling per annum. £20 sterling per annum. There it is. 20 pounds is a great deal. You know, the average middling family, middling family might make 30 or so pounds a year. So is education a viable object for a middling family? Thus we see this system of aristocracy continue from generation to generation. Usually those who can afford an education receive an education, and then we see those men sit in the highest seats of power and holding the greatest offices of power in this country. This is aristocracy. Is education a right?
Should be.
Should be. I believe it's a right. I believe it should be guaranteed by the state. I believe that you should be educated regardless of your sex, regardless of how much money you make or do not make. I proposed a bill for that education system here in Virginia. It's a publicly funded system of education, meaning if you find yourself a citizen of Virginia, the state will pay for your education because education is a right. We are turning the entire power of government over to whom? We are turning the entire power of government over to whom?
The people.
So who should be educated?
The people.
You would never board a ship captained by a man who was unlearned in the skills of navigation and captaineering, yes? So why would we in the ship of state choose to turn the wheelhouse over to a group of people who are uneducated? If you are now running this thing, then you should be educated. This is my belief. That bill has not yet passed. It's sitting in the House as we speak, amongst several other bills. I proposed 126 bills. I'm the most active legislator in the entire continent at this moment. It's a point of pride. 126 bills that I proposed in that very building, in the Capitol building, the same building that in May of '76 voted for independence unanimously. We think of July as that momentous, pivotal moment in our now collected history. But we cannot forget that the entire reason we were debating independence in Philadelphia is because what colony, state, had just voted for independence?
Virginia.
Virginia, and sent it on by Mr. Lee on horse to Philadelphia. And Mr. Lee read the resolution, placed it before us all there in Philadelphia. Now, he said, it is the time for all of us to debate this issue of independence. Virginia has just voted for independence. Now, what say you? The whole reason we were debating independence is because of what happened just there. A unanimous vote, not a single nay. I proposed 126 bills. We'll go through them now. Very good. I shall simply skip across the surface. We'll go through 4. 4 bills which I believe might promote this new system of equity. This new system of aggrandizement of rights. Simply because we declared independence last year in '76 does not mean that our government has entirely changed, right? Now this is the work. To gain the government that we promised in the Declaration of Independence. One of these great promises is that all men are
Created equal.
Do you believe this to be true?
Yes.
You believe it in your mind, yes? In your heart, yes? Your personal and collective philosophies that all men in nature are born equal, free, and independent, yes?
Yes.
Do we see it in our law?
No.
No.
So might you say that our law sits in incongruity with our philosophy?
Yes.
Montesquieu talks about this. Rousseau talks about this. John Locke talks about this. They suggest that philosophy will always be the engine that promotes our system of laws to further improvement. Thus meaning, exceptio probat regulum, that our laws will always necessarily, unfortunately, be behind our personal systems of philosophy. You might look to your time and find this to be true. You might see in your time systems of laws that seem in dissonance with your philosophy. This might cause you great pain. It might cause you consternation. It might disallow some from the right of suffrage, this act, this noble act given to us by that ancient Roman gift of a republic, that Hellenistic gift of a democracy, this natural right for men to choose their own government. You might find other systems of laws in your time that you wish, through your personal philosophy and your natural gift, your right guaranteed by your government, to change within your government. This is the work. This is your work. This ship of state is now run by you. Well, so long as you're white. Yes? What about women? All right, so long as you're a white male. And 21 years of age or older. Oh, and Protestant Christian. So Baptists, Catholics, Quakers, Dunkards, Nothingarians, these atheists, Mohammedan, Hebrew need not apply. You must also be a landowner, free and clear of mortgage. These are the 5 requirements in Virginia. But if you meet those 5 simple requirements in Virginia, then congratulations, you can help steer the ship of state. We call this the status quo. This is something else that I'm attempting to dismantle through some mitigated half steps. But this new government will necessarily, unfortunately, sometimes move in half steps. Very good, the 4 bills, and then I shall turn the conversation over to you. No doubt you brought your minds with you, yes?
Yes.
Again, what exuberance. Our Creator gifted us with reason. We are sapientiae, we are homo sapiens. Sapientiae is Latin for reason. Our Creator gifted us with reason, certainly. He expects us to use it. I expect you to use it today. In a mutual confab. He would have it no other way. Where else is man more free? Where else is man more free to speak his mind, to speak his opinion, and even speak dissent against his government than here on this soil? What a beautiful right. 4 bills are so numbered in the batch of 126, bill number 21, bill number 51, bill number 79, and bill number 82. Bill number 21, we're doing away with primogeniture and entail.
Yay!
I see the second sons are applauding. I'm the eldest male. I have an older sister, but as per our laws of primogeniture and entail, the eldest male generally receives the greatest amount of inheritance. This is a natural right. You should be able to divvy up and apply to your children equitable portions of your estate should you so choose, including the female. My sisters will enjoy this. I have 8 sisters. It's a wonder that I survived. Secondly, bill number 51, we're making the slave trade illegal in Virginia. This bill has not yet passed, but it is proposed. Proposed in that very building. This bill must be presented to a body of men, all of whom own slaves. Must be debated by a body of men, all of whom own
Slaves.
and then voted upon by a body of men, all of whom own
Slaves.
Do we see a problem here?
Yes.
Status quo. We have a problem wherein the crux is that our natural rights, what we see as natural rights, have not made their appearance within our body of lex scripta, body of written law. What we hope, is that men who sit in seats of power can vote on behalf of their neighbor's self-interest. not necessarily on behalf of their own, knowing that when we gift rights to others, it does not mean that we take rights from ourselves. That if we call these natural rights, if we say in this American promise that all men are created equal, then shouldn't our government reflect that? Otherwise, the promise is toothless. I hope this bill passes. I'm very proud of it. And if men in power will not vote on behalf, who currently sit in seats of power, if they will not vote on behalf of this natural right, then we'll vote them out. Or we shall see a change over time. What better way to encourage change within government than by a system of publicly funded education wherein you, now educated, understanding rights, understanding the promises made in this country, can see them fulfilled because of your education, your enlightenment, you sapient kings. You can then vote for men who also believe in this philosophy and that our government should be better. So, thus, Bill 79. That's the bill that I prior mentioned. I call it the Bill for the More General Diffusion of Knowledge. It's a very lofty title, but I'm an attorney. I get paid by the word. My bill for the more general diffusion of knowledge, as stated, provides for public funds for education for men and, gasp,
Women.
I'm a radical, men and women in Virginia who now can understand rights and begin to change the government under which they sit. Lastly, Bill number 82, my statute for Virginia for religious freedom. This quite simply means that all in Virginia will have the ability to practice his or her religion without fear of force of government. Even the Baptists. Again, I am a radical. There's a colloquialism in Virginia. Our jails, you can see it just there. Our jails are called Baptist prayer houses. We still, in this year of 1777, have one state-sanctified religion. I ask you, should your government ever be involved between a conversation between you and your Creator? Should your government ever dictate your reason of conscience, of ecclesiastical thought?
No.
And yet we have seen it. We have seen it in history. We have seen this marriage of church and state not just take place upon English form that we inherited, but in other nations around the world, this marriage of church and state, I say, began in 1458 with a mistranslation by Chief Justice Priseau. The original quote was by Chief Justice Priseau. The mistranslation was by a gentleman named Finch, spelled like the bird. Chief Justice Priseau said that our civil law should give credence to ancient scripture. Ancient scripture. Mr. Finch, unfortunately, mistranslated that pivotal phrase from ancient scripture to holy scripture, and thus we have a marriage of church and state begun in that one mistranslation, that seed of thought, nefarious in its means. I say that a marriage of church and state ends in three eventualities because I read history, I enjoy history. I say that history is the most important subject that man might study, and I enjoy a great number of subjects. A marriage of church and state ends in three eventualities: cruelty, meanness, and bloodshed. So if we wish to continue this marriage of church and state, we know what is down the road. We've been there, we've seen it. You can read about it. Or we can do something new. We can allow, radically, the Catholics to practice in Virginia. And Mohammedan, and Hebrew, etc., etc. There is no asterisk excluding any one sect, because we understand, I understand, that when you deny one man his rights, what does that mean for your own? If you deny your neighbor his rights, what does that mean for you? You're next. 2 words. You're next. We call it precedence, do we not? We allow the government to do this to someone, doesn't affect you, it's someone else, but now the government has precedent to do it to you. Conversely, when you protect your neighbor's rights, what does that do for your own?
Protect your own.
Further protects them, sanctifies them. It is in your self-interest. It is in your self-interest to protect your neighbor's rights. Cannot say that loud enough. And yet we do not see that entire system placed in our series of laws in Virginia, and thus why I'm back in Virginia. I chose not to continue to attend the Congress, the Continental Congress, but now it's just called the Congress there in Philadelphia. I chose to maintain my home back here in Virginia because this is the work that needs to be done. I can do this work under a system of my jurisdiction where I'm an elected official of Virginia. I can do this work for Virginia. I can't legislate for South Carolina or North Carolina or Georgia or Maine, but I can help here. This is the work. This is where we are. If we win this thing, and by this thing I mean this war, if we win this thing, we would do better to create a government that was better than the one we just left. Or else I say, this also is rather radical, I say we would have been better to stick with monarchy without the bloodshed. So we must, it is imperative, we must create a government that is better than the one we just left. Or else, why are we dying? Why is our soil commingled with blood? This is the work. I apologize, I've not made introduction. You have no idea who I am. I could announce myself as Patrick Henry. Nay, I'm not Patrick Henry. If I were, we'd be here until tomorrow morning, and I just would have finished my opening remarks. I know not where that man gets his great torrent of language. Perhaps it's divinely inspired. The hurricanos issued forth from that man's mouth are a buffet indeed. I have stood against them several times, and several times lost as an attorney. The great orator, Mr. Henry. I say, where would we be without Patrick Henry, the voice of this entire revolution, the voice of this age who helped unite us? I saw his famous speeches, you know. One of them was just there in that building. You know which speech I'm talking about? You do not. Very good, friends. I wish to turn the conversation over to you. And thus we can engage in mutual confab as we now engage in mutual confab within this very government. What an appropriate situation. We can test the thing just here. This conversation must be had in the halls and seats of power through debate. We shall have such conversation, perhaps debate here upon this dais today. In proper parliamentary procedure, then, the gentleman proposes a motion to cede the remainder of his time to the people. Is there a second for this motion?
Aye.
Has been so seconded. It's now before the floor for a vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Oh, come. There will not be one nay. Thank you. Who voted nay? You know, in Virginia, you vote by your voice. There is no private ballot. Every man sees you when you vote at the courthouse steps. So if you tell your friends or your wife that you're going to vote in one direction and you vote in the other, you will hear about it at dinner. Nonetheless, we thank you for your voice of dissent. Let us not forget this entire country was founded upon dissent, founded upon men who stood up and said nay. Right? If we're all thinking the same thing, then someone's not thinking. So we thank you for doing the thinking for all of us today. Nonetheless, my name is Thomas Jefferson of Albemarle County. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. The conversation is yours. By the simple raising of your hands, we can engage in mutual, delightful, civil conversation. Yes.
When your road to first declaration and it was destroyed and denied by Congress, what was in it to make them have that reaction? Were they radical ideas?
I thank you. The gentleman from the state of Pennsylvania is inquiring as to the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, of which there were several drafts made in private, as it was my obligation to draft the thing and then submit it to my Committee of Five. And then from our Committee of Five, alterations were made and then submit that draft out of committee or subcommittee into committee as a whole, as we had just dissolved from proper Congress into committee as a whole. It's a simple sidestep of parliamentary procedure so that we could vote and debate and vote and debate, and the votes aren't binding. This is important because the first vote for independence was 7-6. It was split. The gentleman's inquiring as to what was in my original draft, which you can find if you ask Dr. Google. You look up Jefferson's original rough draft, you'll find my draft in my pen, actually. What was in it that Congress voted against, removed? Should be said that Congress worked mostly in the days of July 2 to July 4, worked mostly in the negative, removing great portions of my declaration. I believe perhaps the most hot issue in that Declaration of Independence was my anti-slavery clause, which you don't find today in yours because South Carolina and Georgia voted to remove that clause. South Carolina, Mr. Rutledge, in fact, stood up, removed his hat, placed it on the green broadcloth table before him. The floor recognized the gentleman from South Carolina. Mr. Rutledge begins to speak and says, South Carolina proposes a motion that the vote on this document, the Declaration of Independence, be unanimous. It seems wise, innocuous even. Georgia stands up and seconds that motion, and then it becomes a unanimous vote. We must be in agreement, in accordance on this thing. And then South Carolina turns right around and says South Carolina refuses to vote on this document with the anti-slavery clause therein. Georgia again seconds that motion, and now 2 states hold the other 11 hostage, and we have this terrible scale in front of us in that moment. You understand? Montesquieu says that matters of morality and ethics should not be placed on a number scale. But in that moment, Congress had a terrible choice, and that was to choose to begin divided and begin to solve this issue of slavery, or do we begin united and push the issue to some future legislative body? Well, we know what happened. So I say that Congress emasculated my document. My document began by saying that all men are created equal, and by the latter third we were doing something about it. It wasn't as toothless as it might appear today, or as hypocritical as it might appear to you today. So now it's a state issue, which is why I'm back here proposing the exact same end or mitigated end to that institution. I attempted to do it with that body under which I had some jurisdiction, at least of opinion, over the entire continent. Couldn't quite shove it through then. Dr. Franklin says that for 2 days he sat next to me and watched me squirm. At one moment, I grew angry and left. I walked out the back door. So, c'est la vie. Thank you for your curiosity. Yes?
So how do you explain your own ownership and relationship with slaves?
So the gentleman from the state of South Carolina inquires as to my own relationship with slaves and slavery. How can I explain this relationship that I have? I say that I inherited slaves. We all inherited slavery. This is an institution that has been long-standing upon this continent. The first ship, I believe, was in 1619, and we have seen a series of laws change over time to further constrict that noose around now what we know as a certain look of people. It didn't begin as a black and white issue, but our laws, as we say, and historians will agree with, our laws ever perfected the institution of slavery. Our system of laws continued to bind us to them and them to us. In 1705, there was a law that was passed in Virginia. This was prior to my birth, some 20 years prior to my birth. In 1705, there was a law passed in that very building that said any quote-unquote abominable mixture of blood is now also bound in servitude. So now we're not just looking at the Negro, now we're looking at, as the law says, any abominable mixture of blood. We call them in legalese mulattoes. This is to place societal pressure against this interracial commingling of relationship. That law was amended again 18 years later because it did not say any abominable mixture of blood and all of their children ad infinitum. It simply said the first generation. So it's no surprise that 18 years later, when that first quote-unquote abominable mixture of blood is now beginning to have children of their own, well, what does the legislature do? They make a new law to further bind and further tighten the noose and further perfect the institution. That law in 1723 now says any child born of her body. So now we see intergenerational slavery not just with Negroes, but with mulattoes. So I say that we inherited this institution of slavery. I own slaves, I have slaves. My father passed away when I was 14, and being the eldest male, I received everything. I received 65 or so slaves, 7,000 or so acres, and now they are, I say, my obligation. In fact, I rarely call them, and I won't say never, I rarely call them my slaves. I call them my people, I call them my family, and I say that if I were to sell my slaves, it does not solve the problem of slavery. They would be bought by a new master and be treated however the new master wishes to treat them. So I maintain my slaves, and I believe that I maintain them in a fairly humane manner. I say that I deeply restrict the use of the lash. This is accounted for in my account books, that I have let overseers go for the abuse of my people and my family. I say I never divide a family. This is sometimes a common terrible practice to punish a slave. I'll sell your child if you X, Y, and Z. Some of my slaves are paid. I give my slaves ground upon which they may grow their own produce for their own profit. I strongly suggest that my slaves maintain their own income. They're given livestock, which they can do the same with. They can sell or create sustenance for themselves to do so what they choose. So I believe that I have a great system of humanity to these people until I can encourage the state to do what is in the best interest of natural rights and natural equality. So my thesis is this: I'm attempting to get the state to do what I personally cannot. Does this make sense? I have a great deal of debt, unfortunately, and 90% of my income comes from the backs of people that I own. I cannot relinquish myself from my 90% of my income and still pay down even the interest on this debt. The mechanics of the equation do not work. So if I maintain them in healthy, humane conditions while encouraging the state to do what the state can do to end slavery, then we might work our way out of this. Does this begin to answer your question? I have time for maybe one more, but I must be brief in the curiosity. I must give it to the youngest
Please.
member of our audience. Yes.
So, what did you do when you visited France?
What did I do when I visited France? What is your name?
Sarah Catherine?
Sarah Catherine. How old are you?
9.
9. Can you read? Yes. And can you write too? Very good, Sarah Catherine. When I go to France, I have not yet gone in this year of 1777, but hypothetically I might go in the year 1784 after my wife passes away in 82, and hypothetically Madison will dangle the carrot of France in front of me, and on the third time I will bite. And then hypothetically I'll spend 5 years, and I say, in the delightful fields of vaunted Europe, and wherein I will visit museums, I'll see art, I'll engage in, as my job at that moment as an elected official, I'll engage with other countries to create treaties of alliance, treaties of commerce and trade, and put our nation on the best footing that I can possibly create. I might fall in love again while I'm in France as well. I might even, while chasing this love across a pasture, hop a fence and fall and break my wrist, thus making it difficult for me to play my violin. Equally, I will read. I'll attend libraries. Do you know what those are? Where we can check out books. I'll attend libraries and I'll read history, the most important subject that man might study. And I'll go into the history section, I'll pull off a book, I'll blow off the dust, I'll read them, the history, and I'll say, my God, what ancient, tired, old mistakes. History has the ability to teach us of the mistakes made generations prior, and I'll close that book and I'll reshelve it in the correct position, Sarah Catherine, always in the correct position, and then I'll step away into terra incognita, unknown territory, and then I will make new mistakes. Man is imperfect. We will always make mistakes. Man is flawed. But the hope is that we make new mistakes, not the same mistakes made generations prior. You will not make the same mistakes your father did and his father before him. Your job is to not make mistakes. Your job is to make new mistakes. And someday, Sarah Catherine, when you age, your life will be written about by the scratch of quill and the flicker of candle, and your entire volume of life will be will be etched out. And then your children or grandchildren, should you so choose to have them, will read in a library, blowing off the dust of a history book, and they'll open it up and they'll say, my God, Sarah Catherine, what ancient, tired, old mistakes. This is the progress of mankind. This is your obligation. I'm happy that you can read, that you are educated. Now, if I can urge you to read history so that you can help steer the ship of state into more placid, calm, unexplored, beautiful waters, as opposed to, I say, these ancient rocks of apathy and ignorance. Yes? What a beautiful question. Friends, unfortunately, we are at our time. I wish to give you 2 sentences before we depart. That is, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for being advocates of education. Thank you for being advocates of history, the most important subject that man might study. Anytime you find yourself uncertain of what to do, if you find your waters clouded and your newsmen are writing issues that seem polluted by non-fact, I hope that you know that you can come here. And beyond our gates, every single day, 365 days a year, we speak fact here in Williamsburg. And that is something we could all do with a bit more of. Yes?
Yes.
Secondly, you're not off the hook. I know you came here on vacation, but I'm going to give you homework. Your job is to continue these conversations like the one we just had. Continue these conversations. Continue this debate. Our government is founded upon debate. But please, as you debate, please, let us put civility back into our debates. Yes? This is your obligation. If you wish to see change within the halls of government, then you must be that change. Our government will always be a reflection of you. So if you want your government to be better, then you must be better. That being said, let's get to work. Until we meet again, I'm ever your humble and most obedient servant, Thomas Jefferson.
Well, that's a wrap for this Colonial Williamsburg video. I hope you really enjoyed it, getting to see another part of this amazing living history museum. If you like this sort of stuff, check out my other videos. Check out colonialwilliamsburg.org to plan your own visit here, because it's so much cooler in real life than it is on film. Till next time, this is History Buff, TN Photobug signing out, and I'm having a blast with the past.